It's really a layered and nuanced thing depending on what the exact specific event was and what you know about it, and then how do you make an action plan based on those observations.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about a cybersecurity type event, I mean, that's hard to plan for, right? You don't know. I mean, we do a lot of testing to what Stephen said. I mean, we run through playbooks. Hey, what happens if this happens? Go. And I think that's great practice. I'm an old Army guy, so once you do it several times, you just get pretty good at it. But every cybersecurity event I've ever had, there's always a curveball. There's nothing you didn't plan for. Like I tell the business all the time, I'm not going to lose data, right? But if I say I'm going to have you back up in 2 hours, there's a lot of depends there, right? So if I have to go to my immutable storage and I'm trying to bring in 7, 9, 10 terabytes from the cloud, this is going to take a little bit more. I can't do it in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of depends on these events that happen. And I think ransomware early on was really, really devastating. But now with the tools that we have today, I mean, the blast radius is not what it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, one guy could get in 30 minutes, your whole infrastructure is toast. Now with, products like CrowdStrike or I'm sure SentinelOne, I mean, they're able to prevent the blast radius going, too bad. I mean, too quickly. I haven't seen anything recently. Knock on wood there, but yeah, I mean, I think as we talk about disaster recovery and how we do these things, it's important to differentiate between a hardware failure and a cybersecurity event, because I think they're two completely different scenarios. And I mean, hardware today is traditionally pretty stable, right? I mean, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I mean, it was a full-time job just to run a data center. Now I go to it twice a year. I mean, the hardware is pretty reliable. Everything's redundant. I spend more time on the cybersecurity front now. That's what I'm more concerned about than the hardware piece by any means, especially in a multi-tenant, multi-cloud environment. It's challenging. Yeah.
Honestly, I think y'all all kind of hit around what I've been kind of sitting here thinking on as y'all are providing your answers, which is the days of like the big disaster, right? We have a plan, right? We know we have backups and all this stuff, and we know it's not going to go smoothly, no matter what it is. Whether it's if we've, the kind of act of God, like hurricane situation, your building's underwater. Hey, we're going to buy new hardware. We're going to send a new facility up. Like, there's no good answer for that other than it's just going to cost time and money, right? And then same thing with a massive cyber event. If all of our guards have failed along the way and we've just been completely compromised in that area, then again, same thing. We're just going to start from our backups and clean room it and get it up and running. I think now what we're really focusing on is more micro disasters, right? Because to your point, blast radius is smaller. We've done all these right things to protect our environment. And I think that leads to one really key part, which is individual or team empowerment, right? But before, there was this kind of thing as, hey, pull out the playbook, we're going to run through it, and you go do this, you go do that. The directions are here, like, because we could plan those things out. Now it's everyone has to be somewhat empowered as an individual to know their area. Joe, you hit on it earlier. It's like running a smaller team, people wearing a bunch of hats. They have to be experts in their area, whatever they're responsible for. And it's the same thing when, cyber training, like cybersecurity training kind of came out. It's like in the beginning, people were hitting phishing attempts and stuff like that. And it wasn't until we started really enforcing training on individuals to say, you know what, I do think this is suspicious. I'm going to flag it and I'm going to do something that I wouldn't, because we've kind of trained ourselves. Same concept here when it comes to disasters. We've now empowered our individuals to be better, whether as an individual or within their smaller teams, to drive this innovation so that before it becomes a full-blown disaster, we've narrowed it down. It's like, hey, we're already in recovery mode. Yeah, the service is going to be out for a couple hours, but we're going to get it back up and running because we already know these parts of our business. And it's not a full-blown business outage. It's a micro outage within a certain region. To your point, you don't go to data center anymore, but I'm sure your data center takes hits like from time to time. And the business doesn't even know about it because you've built in, your team functionality and getting it back up and running. So I think that's really where we're going to spend more and more time, besides buying the best tools and stuff, is making sure our team members are empowered to be really successful.
Yeah, and we're implementing a kind of a new strategy that I'm really pushing application owners to understand the dependencies of their applications. Right? You hear me say the other day, I got 500 applications. Well, I only got 10 people that support and manage the infrastructure from your backups to all the clouds. So very challenging for 10 guys to know 500 applications in and out in the order of what things are going to do. So like if I lose a certain customer facing application, that application owner should know what the dependencies are. They can join a call and we can bring those dependencies up in a certain, they can help my infrastructure guys, right? Again, if identity's down, everything's down, right? So that's first. And then you can start looking at the order of operations. So something I'm trying to do right now is roll out. Everybody has an application owner. They need to understand like a checklist. What are your dependencies? Is it depending on the cloud? Is it depending on API calls? Is it depending on identity? Whatever these things are, yeah, I don't need you to understand them. I just need you to know this is what it takes to make this motor run or this application run. That way I can make sure when we're going through our checklist, we got the right people on the right phone. Because that's probably a big challenge for us, right? Everybody, when you're in the middle of an outage, that first 2 hours it's very panicky, right? Nobody knows. You're trying to figure it out. And then all of a sudden, leadership and people will come in. You have a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacks that are like, everybody now wants to take control and tell you how to do it. And there's a lot of depends on it. So I'm really trying to shift that away from leadership and putting it on the application owner to see if that is a better, method to the madness, right? Dealing with one or two application outages is totally different when you have 150 down, right? Then there's only so many people you can put on the phone. You're going to have to prioritize. And I think most people have a project plan or some kind of plan of DR, like these are the critical applications, money first, customer facing. And I think every business has that. But it's all the other little applications that really make the business run. It's not about just paying your bill. That's what the money people want to hear. There's a lot. If I lose all my visibility to all my security tools and I'm in the middle of a recovery, well, I don't even know what I'm recovering. Am I recovering something I just recovered a server that's infected? And you look at a lot of these sophisticated attacks. These guys are sitting in these environments for weeks and sometimes months before they do this attack. So they're sitting on it and you don't know where they are. You're like, oh, the incident happened at 1 a.m. I'm just going to recover from 12 and we're good to go. And then you get it recovered. The system comes back up for 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden, rinse and repeat. We're back infected. And, there's a lot of depends. I think visibility from your security tool set is number one. How you're monitoring your environment and coming up with like an application game plan of what services it takes to run this application. So
one things we've seen kind of over the last year, the kind of incidents that we've observed, John, I'd love for you to jump in here, but it has been around identity. It has been a compromised, elevated account credential. That's what's really allowed them to come in there and camp and bird dog everything, right? With those types of, administrative privileges. So, to me, I think a lot of it is going to be, other elements of protection like the PAM type of solutions to protect against that, but then also monitoring the changes as part of your backup, protect Intra, protect Active Directory, and be proactive about looking at changes, right? Whether it's through the introspection that you're getting from the protection mechanism that will tell you things like, hey, this changed, that changed, or by just monitoring those identity providers themselves, right? Because it's been pretty much, it hasn't really been about firewalls, right? It hasn't really been about, exploits of Apache, right? It hasn't been SQL injection, those types of things that have been getting folks by and large. It's been the admin credentials. And one of a customer we worked with, they do a lesser amount of acquisitions, but nonetheless, they did a good amount, and they made a big mistake when they acquired a company and they set up a two-way trust between AD domains, and the company they were acquiring was already owned, right? So immediately with that two-way trust, they were owned immediately upon acquisition. So
it's what you're talking about, the dwell time, right? Is if we don't know that they're in there, Joe, you hit it on the nail on the head earlier. It's like as soon as we've gone through recovery mechanisms, we've just re-let them back in. So to your point, Joe Galvan, on that side of it is that if we don't know if that environment's safe, right? And the last thing we want to do is expose identity. It's one thing, to your point, like, hey, we got them sectioned off. They're on a different segment of the firewall. They're, their own zone of the network. They're doing their own thing, but we don't really trust them, right? But the moment we handshake and we say, okay, hey, your identity is our identity, and vice versa, there's kind of no going back, right? Is we've now let you in, and we've let the bad guy, hopefully, in this situation, we find them in time before they do crazy damage to the existing environment. But in most cases, we want to protect identity at all costs. And so it's much better just to keep them separated. And I think, Joe, you said how many different domains you're running. I mean, there's honestly some beauty into that design, because if one of these companies gets compromised, it doesn't impact everything else. Yeah, it's unfortunate for that localized business, but to the greater whole, there's some beauty in that design.
Almost like having a diversified stock portfolio, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
it's the safer play.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cloud is probably I think there's still some work to be done in the cloud, especially with development. Making everybody is doing the whole CI/CD model, DevOps environment model. Well, in order for those models to work correctly, we got to give a lot of elevated permissions to developers, and it's not the old school way of things. It used to be you needed a server, you had to talk to an infrastructure guy. He went in and configured everything, and he gave you the permissions only that you needed. But in the cloud, it doesn't typically work that way, especially with these whole DevOps environments. And that's what probably keeps me up the most, because they're changing code all the time. I mean, they could open up a firewall rule that it didn't know. And I have alerts and just going through this, but I mean, again, 500 applications. I mean, you're making changes weekly, and they're deploying new code. They got to rip new code out. And then, we have all these tools like, the IPs is probably the biggest challenge for me. Guys will tell me all the time, hey, just open it up and trust Amazon. What? Like, that's, well, that's what we're going to do it. Can you just whitelist Amazon? I'm like,
sure.
I don't, that's too big of a bite that I'm willing to bite off here, So there's a lot of unique challenges, but I think the cloud is really, it gives us a lot of flexibility, but it opens so many vulnerability and doors that it's just too much for one person or one architect to understand, especially when you got 100 cooks in the kitchen. Right. At any given time, they're making changes. Things are moving through. The cloud's going to do what the cloud's going to do. They'll deprecate code without even knowing. Like, hey, they sent you an email. This is going away. It's going to stop working. All these things create a lot of challenges for us today. And especially with the cloud. The cloud is, we can't really control it as much as you can on-prem. You can roll.
So you think like the lizard's tail methodology is probably a better approach for the cloud? It's just basically we've given this permissions to these developers to do these things, and as soon as we suspect anything, we just cut it off, and the rest of the business can keep going, and that can collapse in on itself, and then we'll let it grow back. We'll rebuild it over here, because maybe we've prevented them access into the rest of business data because it's built on this little bubble over here on that side. I personally like that as a security guy, because I want to minimize exposure to everything else. So it's like, hey, if I'm giving this level of permissions, and I don't have a team of people that are constantly looking at every alert, every log event of every change that they're doing. That's just not possible, even with AI, right? Because maybe AI can't keep up, and it's funny to say, AI can't keep up with the level of changes and understanding the business of what we're doing for it to be really usable because of how it's evolving. Then we just lizard tail, we cut it off and let it die off, and we'll grow another one on the other side.
Yep.
Do you feel like it's getting harder and harder to try and understand permissions across a broad organization though, right? I mean, it feels like really knowing, and the interfaces don't help, right? I mean, I'll end up a little bit playing even just within M365, and the points where you can go and do any type of work that grants or removes permissions feels pretty distributed, and trying to understand exactly what permissions are needed just to allow what you want them to do versus, the tendency that, well, if I just give them admin, okay, now they can access everything. They'll quit calling me every 10 minutes going, well, that one didn't work. I mean, I looked in some of the Microsoft environment, it's like 15 different roles, but nobody seems to really understand which one of those roles is actually required to do this thing this person wants to do.
Terry, that's a good point. I run into that a lot, even with third party vendors. I'll create a subscription in one of my cloud environments. They want full admin rights, and then I ask them, "What rights do you need?" A lot of these guys can't tell me. I mean, if you look at Azure, there's 900, RBAC roles built in Azure.
Right.
I mean, that's a lot of 900. I don't even know if I don't know every role. I mean, that's just Azure, and then AWS and GCP. They all have. But it's been a little challenging for us, or eye-opening. A lot of vendors out there don't know the permissions they actually need. I mean, the easiest thing is give me admin and let me do my thing. And for most people on this phone, we don't like giving godlike permission to anybody. But the business will always look at it as, why are you standing in the way? Like, we can get this done tomorrow. Right. So it's always every company out there takes risk, right? Some more than others. But it's and everything's being backed by financial decisions. And I try to find the best environment that we can make both people happy, right? How do I make my security guys happy? How do I protect the business from giving unauthorized access or too much access to somebody? There's a lot of times I think I got it figured out, and tomorrow I'll hear something and I'm like, well, that changes the whole game, and I got to start back all over again.
Yeah.
I started with, 1 or 2 subscriptions in my cloud environments, and I'm up to like 19 per environment. And, some are SSO'd, some are local, some got different permissions, and they're all justified, but it does make the environment very complex to manage. Especially when you talk about DR. And that's, everybody says they have a plan, that they get punched in the mouth, right? And then reality sets in. It doesn't ever work, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever had one outage, and I've been doing this 30 years, where it just went as planned. Now I can do an exercise and I can simulate a cut. And I mean, they usually hit the metrics pretty quick, right? Look, I got the business fully recovered in 2.5 hours. Look at that. No problem. Right. But that's just not the reality that we have to deal with when something happens, especially a cyber attack. I mean, it's first is identifying what the problem is, defining the problem, and that could take some time. I mean, you got all these alerts coming. Well, this system's down, and you're like, okay, what caused it? What's the underlying cause here? That's probably the biggest challenge, looking for tools to discover the dependencies that took all these applications down in a timely manner. Because I think that first hour is critical. The first hour is really critical, especially in a cyber attack.
Right, because it gets worse the longer time goes on, right?
Oh, yeah. Most of the attacks I've seen, the guys do it in 5 minutes. What they want to do, they know they're going to get discovered. When they start going to work, these tools are too smart. We're going to get alerted. But they've already done the damage that they've done in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They already know that we're on. I mean, they've already mission accomplished. I think with any company that has a security layer approach, some of these newer tools, it's very hard for people to stay in there too long actually doing something. Right. They're just monitoring. That's one thing, and they're doing reconnaissance. But once they go to work, if they're going to try to steal money or they're going to try to do ransomware, I've seen a lot on Workday. Workday is a big HR platform, a payroll. They'll come in and compromise identities, and they're going to launch their attack 5 hours before payroll runs. So you got 5 hours, right, to determine what's going on. And they do it at 2 a.m. They do it 1 a.m. So I believe that's where AI and agents and log analysis is going to be critical to take our what we could learn down. If I could learn anything in 4 or 5 minutes, I think we're in pretty good shape. But It never happens that way. The guy that runs it is always on the road with their family at the time that this is going on. He's sitting on a laptop in the middle of nowhere or camping. That's what it's going to happen. I always make that, the joke. But probably 80% of the time, it's the guy you don't want on vacation. It's going to be on vacation when you get hit.
It's almost like they know.
It's conspiracy theory, yes.